Hi, I'm Dr. Mark, and I'm going to help you sing and perform more like the top artists around the world. I'm a professional voice teacher, performance coach, and opera stage director. I've helped thousands of singers around the world learn the techniques and methods that got the top singers to where they are. Let's talk about what makes Dimash's performance of Samal Tao so awesome. Here we go. So for any story that we tell, the first step of a good story is always an introduction, right? So if you look at the story arc of traditional literature and anything else, they always talk about the introduction and then the development and climax and denouement, right? So here we have a really clear introduction. What's the information being told us? Well, we have this obviously traditional folk instrument setup and sound that is relatively sparse. There's not a lot happening there, but it's so rich in the mood it creates and the environment it creates. Visually, we have this river coming down. The contrast is really sharp in the costumes. It's just really cool. It just sets a really, really great environment for this song to live in. That introduction sometimes has to happen in a matter of seconds. Sometimes we have a little bit longer, like 10, 20, 30 seconds. But any way it goes, even if it's a split second before that song starts, that introduction, the mood we're setting, the character is really important for the audience to be able to hear what you have to say and to be able to listen and understand the story in the way you intend them to hear it. Here, it seems really clear, it's really engaging, even though it's relatively simple if you think about it. There's not a lot going on musically yet. There's not a lot going on visually. You could argue that, I guess, if you're talking about costumes and instruments and Dimash and the video stuff going up on the screen and the lighting. That seems a lot, but it's not busy and cluttered. It's relatively simplistic and minimal, but it's communicating so much. To me, I think that's something that speaks to artistry and being awesome, is that it shows that it takes a lot of forethought and being deliberate to make a little bit express so much. And it shows sensitivity and artistry in that they're being deliberate about what they're wanting to show and communicate and doing it effectively. Love it.
Samal Tao, kayran elem şalkar gülüm. Ne bolar saldat bolla baynam, kırgın günüm ay. Yesem
What's the other thing that what we're seeing communicates? We're seeing and hearing things that imply large spaces, vastness, right? This river, but the black seems like it can go on forever. This forced perspective of it looking like this river goes back and back and back. And we hear this sound that's just sparse and seems like we should be just seeing huge open big plains and wide open places. also adds this folk kind of feeling, but it's just so vast and it's so big and it's wondrous, right? It kind of captures the wonder of what it's like to be in a countryside or to be in a more rural place. Again, this is the first time I'm watching this. I don't really know what this is about a lot, but that's to me what it's communicating. And to have him start further back and wander his way down there also communicates a journey, that he's going on a journey, he's going on discovery. It also builds a sense of anticipation in the audience to have something get closer and closer and closer to you. And so I think that's really, really awesome how it's setting up as well. His voice, he's also using it in a way that feels very folk-like in terms of the melodic line and how he's treating that, but also in terms of his use of straight tone and vibrato and the freeness of it. It's not one of his super refined sounds. Obviously it's refined and it's gorgeous and it's great, but it has kind of a wildness to it that's really exciting to hear and fits this song really, really well. And it's something that I think makes it awesome. So if he's talking about being a soldier and marching, and the music and the words kind of suggest a dusty late afternoon type of feeling, right? This kind of lethargy almost, this tiredness, this exhaustion, this kind of forlornness a little bit. Why would they choose colors that are hitting him and behind him that kind of suggest nighttime? Why? Why would they do that? Well, there's a few reasons. One is immediately it adds more contrast, especially to his face. You'll notice here that his face pops out from that dark background a little bit more. And because he's wearing dark clothes, that diminishes what his body's doing and really draws attention to his face, which is important in this moment because he's being really expressive with his face and he is telling a story. And we're supposed to focus on who he is and the humanity and the person he's trying to portray here. So that really, our focus on his face makes it feel that way, makes it feel more intimate and makes us feel connected to what's going on, and there's less to distract us from that. It also keeps our focus over on these instrumentalists, which add a lot both with what we're hearing to kind of the mood of it, but also visually. They're really expressive with how they're playing and what they're doing. So it also adds this element of ensemble that's happening here. There's two ways to think about how we treat the set and lights and costumes and props. One is to treat them very literal. So the example here would be is if the words and text and music suggest that it's probably daytime and lethargy, we should probably, instead of having this black background, kind of have oranges and dusky kind of lights. But the other aspect of it is to think, well, if he's already talking about it, that's information he's given us. And if we put that in the set, then wouldn't we just be redundant and saying the same thing? So why not put some different information into the visual world that gives us more insight into what is not readily apparent? So in this case, you could argue that maybe this blackness, this emptiness, this void is more a representation of what's going on in his inner world, right? Is we only see this river and everything else is just kind of washed out. Maybe he's just so tired, so exhausted, or whatever, that all he can think about is water and flowing water and leaving and traveling and going and marching and being a soldier, right? Don't know. But it's really interesting to watch and to view. The temptation is to say, well, that's a mistake, right? What we're seeing in the back, it doesn't really match the words and doesn't really match what else is going on. What I'd encourage instead is to think, let's give the people involved the benefit of the doubt, especially with Dimash's team and with the consistency of his performance. What they have done and what they seem to do is very deliberate. Everything that they do seems very calculated to communicate something very specific and is not just left to chance. So when we're looking at art in general, whether it's performance art or otherwise, the temptation is to think about technique and what's right and what's wrong, and to think of judging it that way rather than what does it make me feel? What does it make me think? How rich is the experience that it creates for me? To me, when I'm watching this, I'm really engaged with what I'm singing. It creates a really rich environment for me to have my own thoughts and feelings and my own experience and not have to just try to interpret what I think they're doing. And I think that's also a sign of a great artist, is being so deliberate yourself that it gives enough detailed information without being overly heavy-handed and spoon-feeding every bit of information to allow the audience to think and feel for themselves. It's a really fine balance to find, and I think Dimash does an awesome job.
Şahsım var, kosmeş elle şılımsıyor. Dağıtırdın aydavım men ayna, kettim kıyırayım. Samal adaskan ürüsünden ayna biz
Wow, that's gorgeous. So one of the things that we're doing is visually we're creating an increase, like a crescendo in the music, but visually, right? We're adding more detail, more light, and more information. One of the questions I had as I was watching him here is, what is it that makes something sound right? That makes the vocal color feel right for the music, right? So if you're singing a rock song and you sing like an opera singer, it can feel off. It feels a little contrived and forced. If you're a pop singer singing an opera song, it also just doesn't quite fit. I can appreciate it, I can value it, and I can think it's really cool. But at the same time, it's just not the same thing, right? It just doesn't match, it doesn't fit. Dimash is really tricky because he's constantly switching styles and genres, and he doesn't really fit into any one. He's constantly kind of moving and going between a lot of different styles and genres and ways of expressing and communicating. So as I was listening here, I was thinking, well, this is a relatively classical sound, but it still sounds folk-ish, and it just really fits what I'm hearing. What is it that makes it that way? Though it's a little bit more abstract, I think the answer to that question is that the voice itself doesn't draw attention to itself. The voice is just a part of the story, part of the expression, part of the communication, rather than, oh, they're doing this with their voice. It sounds this way. Let me just listen to the voice by itself and be impressed by that. His singing, though it can be very impressive, often seems focused on being expressive and trying to communicate a story or an emotion or both. And in this moment, that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that he's tapping into the story, into the emotion, letting his voice follow suit. So we kind of have this nice mix of a just really natural sounding folk, not overly contrived, but rich, warm, full, expressive sound that really kind of captures the mood of this piece. And what we're seeing visually matches and comes along for the ride. And so it's just really engaging and lovely. Okay, so a little bit of fireworks here, but it's still, again, really expressive. He's using a vibrato in a really interesting way where sometimes he's being really consistent, other times he's leaning into the straight tone. That straight tone helps feel a little bit more like that folk element, and then it relaxes in the vibrato, which also has a folk element because it feels natural, but that kind of balance that he's writing there is part of what's making it seem folk-like, is he's going back and forth, as well as the colors. He's going between this more speech-like bright place and this kind of warmer, darker place, and he kind of keeps straddling that, which gets this really warm, rich, mature sound with this really kind of wild, youthful sound as well, which is just really exciting to hear him kind of go around this, but he's doing it in a way where it's very deliberate, which is exciting. Something detailed and nitpicky that I want to point out here is you'll notice what's going on. He's got this black suit, but there's this chain in his collar, these looks like metal rivets or something sitting there, these grommets that are in his collar, or maybe they're buttons, I can't tell. But why? Why would you wear that? I'll tell you why. One of the reasons that's a really smart choice is because this stops the visual line and makes us focus here on the face. You'll notice it kind of creates a complete oval circle here. This circle is like a bullseye or like any other circle where our eyes travel around it and can stay there. It helps us linger on his face. If it wasn't there, then the lines of his suit might distract us and take us down to the floor and out to the rest and bleed into the rest of the black. But instead, our eyes are able to stay on his face and we're able to pick up in our peripheral vision the rest of what's going on with the set. So what we choose in terms of jewelry and the shapes that we put around our face and what draws attention are really important. This metal catches attention. It catches the light and flashy, so we see it against that dark. These choices, what we put on our body, is not just a style issue as a performer. It really is and should be about where we're wanting the audience to look and focus. And here, everything that I'm seeing going on really is about keeping our focus on his face, which makes all kinds of sense for me in this moment, in the story that he's telling. And has a lot of great expressive gestures going on his face, a lot that's happening, and that's where we want to be. That's, in general, when we're watching a performance, where we want to stay. And this moment is gorgeous, especially with everything that's happening behind it. We have the humanity highlighted, but this really rich world around him, and I think it's lovely.
Samalda kayranenim şaltar gülüm ne bolar saldat bollab aynam körgün günüm
Well, that was gorgeous. Thank you to the viewers who recommended that I watch that and review it. It was lovely. It was gorgeous. Visually, it's gorgeous with what I was hearing. The end there, you can tell that they had this kind of crescendo and they built. He got to this high note, both visually and what we were hearing, right? Is this build. And at the end there, he dropped down. He also made it aspirate, which kind of had this decrescendo effect and let us sit with this mood that they had created. And it was just so cool. Absolutely gorgeous work. One of the things that I love when Dimash does some of these more folk-like songs is the authenticity that he brings to it and the genuineness that is there at the same time. He still can be flashy and show off and have that gorgeous sound up top, but if you watch his face, he's engaged with what he's saying and what he's trying to communicate with the audience in a really authentic and genuine way. And I think that's really pleasant to watch, and it makes it really engaging and makes it gorgeous. I really think this is one of his most beautiful pieces, both visually and with what we're hearing put together, and it's lovely. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want a voice lesson or performance coaching or want me to work with you or your group to help you sing easier, perform at a consistently higher level, book a time with me at mrperformingartstudio.com. You can also find shorter sessions and ways to get my attention and get me to respond to stuff by going to scaleabout.com and looking me up there. I'd love to have you reach out to me that way as well. And I hope to work with you online.